a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my face. Work a job every day till your dreams fade away. Like a card, never change, play the game that we say. I need a break. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. Face on when I chase like that. Yeah, I play so strong with a knife in the back. I'ma swing home run like a baseball bat. Gonna see me rise, you can hate on that. I don't play both sides, doing me no cap. I'ma ride or die for my dreams on tap. I'ma fly real high, you ain't see me slack. No, it's not how you fall, it's how you get right back up. That's how you get tough. Calluses on my hands so rough, yeah, I call your bluff. I'm not the one, mess with me and come out with none. Cause I'm so done, you had your fun. And now you're gonna face down the barrel of the gun. Cause I got a full clip with your name on it. But I'ma let you slide cause you ain't worth it. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on.
Live today with today's Storytime stream. We are going to be doing today a few different stories from Magical Girl Anime that are from fanfiction.net. That is who we are doing today. We are going to come in next week with a fan requested series. If you did not know what this series is, each and every week we do a story time based mostly off of what the fans ask for from us. Either we'll do some fan fiction off the fan net, we'll do some original creations from ourselves, or work from other people as well. So if you have something you want to be submitted to our Storytime story read, let us know in the comments below. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. And we will be getting on to our first story for the evening. Well, let's see here. Let me pull it up here. Is this? Nope, that is not the first one. That is the last one for us. Let's see here. Close that one. Is this it? Nope, not that one either. I think it is this one. Yes, this is the first one. Okay. So the first one is based off of Puella Magi Madoka Magica. However, here is the twist on this story. It is a bit humor, and the answer from the creator, which is Theron, or Theralion, or Theron, is, what if QB sought to recruit middle-aged women instead of adolescent girls? So that is the posed question for why this story exists. Alright, let's see if it's any good. Junko Kaname didn't know what to make of the small white creature sitting on her office desk. It looked vaguely like a cat, but it had long ears and was vaguely resembled hands, and gold-colored rings and some unnatural material around said ears. What's more is the creature appeared to speak Japanese. Somehow knew Junko's name. Whether by reading the kanji on her desk plaque or speaking with one of the Junko's acquaintances, scientists would undoubtedly be eager to study a strange new life form, an animal with human intellect. But it was obvious that Kyubey had no intention of being studied. Rather, his business was with Junko. Junko couldn't comprehend what Kyubey wanted from her. She was a successful executive from a famous company, but anyone who wanted to work for or make a business deal with her company would have to go through the appropriate channels. rather than simply show off in her office, unannounced and uninvited. "All right," Junko said. "Who are you and what are you doing in my office?" "I'm known as QB," QB said. "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Junko." "You're awfully familiar, aren't you?" Junko said. "Only my best friend and my husband get to call me by my first name. We're not friends yet, and most likely never will be if you don't show some manners." "You'll have to forgive me. Honorifics and other such courtesies are foreign to my kind. You may simply call me QB." Junko shook her head. She had dealt with American business professionals and knew they did things differently, from shaking hands rather than bowing, and more direct, despite their feelings. They were usually more accustomed to her calling her Kame-san, while speaking Japanese, or Miss Kamene, while speaking English, so Miss Junko understood that most, trying to be polite despite the cultural differences, chose to meet them halfway. Kyubei, however, wasn't so reasonable, but Junko resolved to at least hear his sales pitch. "Fine, Kyubei," Junko said. "Now, tell me why you broke into my office before I call security. I'm a busy woman, and I don't appreciate the disturbance." "I won't advise doing anything rash," QB said. "You're most likely the only one in the office who can see me. So, the security guards, who are mostly male, would think you're playing a prank." Junko let off a bitter and resigned chuckle. Clearly, QB wasn't stupid, nor could he easily be rattled by bluffs or intimidation, so dealing with him would be a challenge, to say the least. "You got me there," Junko says. "But why am I the only one here who can see you?" "Because, out of everyone in this building, you're the only one that has the potential to become a magical girl," QB said. "A woman with a certain age that has the potential to become magical girls who fight against witches." "So, you're saying I am old," Junko says. Word of advice, implying that a woman's old is a great way to get her on her bad side. Junko had to admit she was no longer young. Since her eldest daughter was now a teenager, she could even tolerate being called ma'am, in fact. She saw it as a term of respect. However, she resented any implications that she was old or past her prime, although Kyubei clearly had a use for her. "In the past, we sought to recruit teenage girls," Kyubei said, "due to them being their emotional peak and thus the ideal for our purposes. However, we realized that women like you are like fully ripened fruit, the best for picking." Junko rolled her eyes. Going around and telling people that you were significantly looking for teenage girls for your own purposes was downright creepy. But that didn't seem to bother Kyubei. Worst was his implication that girls were overly emotional and easily manipulated, or downright sexist. He was the worst. Then the senior executive who tried to hint that Junko should settle down and become a housewife before she married Tomohisa. Junko knew that nothing she said would do any good, but instead fixed Kyubei with a cold stare. "But anyway," Kyubei said, "are you willing to sign a contract and become a magical girl?" "Not so fast," Junko said. "Is it really all there is? Just sign a contract and I'm hired." "Of course it is. Were you expecting more?" Junko nodded. "When I first applied to this company, I had to submit an application with a cover letter, resume, and attend 2 rounds of interviews," Junko said. "Out of the dozens of hundreds of applicants, 10 to 20 people, myself included, were brought in for the first round of interviews. The the number were brought back for the second. The company asked me all sorts of questions about my personality, work history, and what could bring to the table, while I asked them a question about the company's mission and culture and what would be expected of me. I had to choose my words very carefully and present myself as possible to stand out from others. You wouldn't have to worry about any competition for this job, QB said, because it's yours if you want it. Yes, but then what? Junko asked. When I was hired, I had to read and sign several pages of documents before my first day of work. Some were so the employee, me, could understand her rights and responsibilities. Some were the company trying to cover its own ass. There were also other documents, like tax forms. QB simply nodded passively. Junko was still rather suspicious of whatever Operation QB was running, and wondered if he'd ever heard of paperwork involved with the hiring of a new employee. If it was true, then she wouldn't trust him to run a lemonade stand, let alone her corporation. In any case, my point is that it's not very smart to hire a new employee or just accept a new job without both parties sitting down and talking about the finer points. Well, very well, Junko, QB said. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. Junko cleared her throat. She was still suspicious of QB, but felt fairly certain he wasn't making up the entire bit about being a magical girl recruiter, so she decided to press him for details. To begin with, what's the pay like? I'm supporting a husband and 2 kids, so I better be a good job. You will not receive a salary for your efforts as a magical girl, nor any monetary reward for defeating witches or their familiars, QB said. But you will be able to make a wish. Anything you want. You can even wish for that your husband and your children never want for anything as long as they live. Junko paused and nodded. She was still more than skeptical, but had to concede that if QB was somehow able to conceal his presence, then perhaps he had the ability to make whatever she desired a reality. So in exchange, I have to fight witches, Junko said. Sounds pretty dangerous, unless I'm mistaken. You aren't mistaken, QB said. But if you become a magical girl, your powers should prove significant to defeat your foes as long as you don't let your guard down. Junko noticed that QB wasn't making any guarantees for her safety. He struck her as rather dishonest and manipulative, but perhaps he was being semi-truthful for once. But once I've made my wish, I can't hope for further compensation, can I? Junko said. That's correct, QB said. The value of one's wish is equivalent to what we expect to get out of you as a magical girl. Hope and despair balance out to 0, after all. Junko had to agree. She spent countless hours slaving away at her job. In exchange, earned the money she needed to support her family. Of course, she was only one person out of dozens of applicants who had gotten her job. But maybe the frustration they felt being passed over was less the joy she felt having the means of earning a living. Fair enough. But what's stopping me from just cutting and running now that I've gotten what I want? Your soul gem. If it breaks, you die. It also darkens over time and is purified when you use a witch's grief seed. All that remains of a defeated witch to cleanse it. If it turns completely dark, I'm sure you can imagine what will happen. In other words, I die or worse, Junko said, noticing that QB did not specify the outcome. Doesn't sound like a very good deal if I'm fighting so hard just to stay alive. It's not only for your sake, QB said. Witches prey on ordinary humans. Their victims are mistaken for accidents or suicide. Moreover, by becoming a magical girl, your efforts will help stave off the entropy. The heat of death of the universe that won't occur until eons pass, Jugon said. There are more pressing worries for people who live to 100 if they're lucky. And you can thank all the magical girls who came before you for that, Kiwi said. So do we have a deal? Junko paused, then firmly shook her head. Absolutely not! To begin with, there would be more than a few things you're suspiciously quiet about, and a few parts that sound like a trick. I deal with contracts on a regular basis, so you can't fool me. I'm not deceiving you, Kiwi said. I'm merely answering your questions. If you say so, Junko said. But I'm too old for wishes. I'm willing to risk my life for. My wish is for the well-being and happiness of myself and my family. That's a wish that only comes true through working hard every day and making sacrifices. I don't know if you'd call that an effort. I put into my job despair, even if there are times when I have drowned the stress and exhaustion in alcohol. But the joy of being with my family, balancing out the pain, and I won't give it up for the world. Junko took a deep breath. I'm sorry, but no, Junko said. I'm not becoming a magical girl. A moment of silence between Junko's answer and her reply sank in. I see. Is that your final decision? Kyubey said. It is, with a pointless or forced pointlessness. Thank you very much for your time, but I must respectfully decline. If you find someone else, can't you? Oh, I most certainly can, Kyubey said, since I never said you were the only woman with potential. Still, if you're feeling desperate enough to change your mind, I'll be waiting. Kyubey excused himself through the window, out of Junko's office, whereupon she got back to work. That evening, Junko went on out for drinks with Kazuo at the usual bar and chatted about their jobs. How has Madoka been faring at school? Junko said. I hope she's behaving herself. Nothing to worry about. Junko, Kazuo said. Kaname is spotless disciplinary record and fairly good grades. Good to hear, Junko said. Don't treat her differently from your other students, just because we're friends, okay? Yes, ma'am. As much as Ko appreciated her friendship with Junko, she was glad it didn't work under Junko. Being superior and supported would likely make things a bit awkward between them. It didn't help that Junko was a strict type. Time flies, doesn't it? 1 minute you're married, next your eldest daughter is in my homeroom. Meanwhile, I haven't been able to get a boyfriend who could last more than a couple months, let alone a husband. Don't despair, Kozuko, Chuko said. I'm sure you'll find Mr. Right sooner or later. Thanks, Junko, Kazuko said, but I never said I was in despair. In fact, I think my newest boyfriend's a keeper. Oh? What makes you so confident? Women's intuition, Kazuko said with a smirk. And in fact, I found him with the help of my new friend, who's something of a miracle worker. Junko paused. Kazuo seemed to be cursed, since her relationships never lasted long, so ordinarily, her confidence would be baseless. Despite this, Junko knew her best friend long enough to realize something had changed in Kazuko's life. I might know this new friend. Possibly, Kazuo said. His name is Kyubey. If you'd like to meet him. All right, so that is the end. I wanted to do this one partly because we are going to be doing this this month. We're going to be doing this series this month, and the anime review for anime anti-climax with movies galore and whatnot. We're going to be doing a review of this series. Yeah. Just having QB try and make deals with old women. It doesn't work. They're too wise. They're too wise. It just wouldn't work. So on to the next story, which is, as you can probably see, and if you're looking at it large enough, Sailor Moon stories. In fact, we are doing Sailor Moon shorts, is what this is called. So these are little shorts. They didn't really give anything of note here. But we're going to go with what they've got here. Yui watched Usagi as she walked off in confused daze. As she watched, she knew it. Prince Endymion, his mind was being controlled by darkness, the Dark Kingdom. His guardian priestesses. She had to do something to free him. But what? She thought for a moment, and then it came to her. Then she stepped in front of the pair. "Hello, Moki-kun and Endo-kun," she said. "Yui," said Motoki. "What? How do you know Endo?" "Oh, I know him," Yui answered. "The real him." "What do you mean, the real him, Motoki?" "That's for me to know," Yuki answered, "and for you not to find out." "But," Motoki started to say. "No buts," Yui interjected. "You two got plans, Motoki." "Kun." "So, no," said Motoki. "Not really, we're just heading home." "Yeah," says Endo. "Well," said Yui, "you go ahead, Motoki-kun. I need to speak with Endo-kun alone." Said Motoki. "Okay, you'll be alright, Endo." "Yeah. See you tomorrow." "See ya." As he walked away from Yui and Endo, Yui turned to look over Endo, an extremely stern look on her face, as she said in an icy voice, "I know you're not Endo-kun. You're Prince Endymion. The Prince Endymion I love and serve. But I will not serve you the way I would as you are now." Endymion, stunned and scared at the time, stuttered, "How?" "Your aura," she answered. "No matter what disguise you make, no matter who you impersonate, your aura remains the same, and I will recognize it as the man I fell in love with, the prince I serve." With that, Yui transformed her original self. As she transformed, she stunned as images of her starting flashing in mind. "Yui-chan," he began to say. "Is that really you?" She answered, "It is I. Now transform. We're going to a place that we won't be disturbed." This is really, really weird. Endo dis as he was told. That's how it's written, folks. Afraid she might do something if he didn't transform into Tuxedo Common from form. When his transform was complete, Yui held out her staff and took his hand, then said, "Take us to the moon." Once they landed on the moon, Yui said, "Look around. It's the ruins now, but see if anything looks familiar to you." Endymion looks around, started to click in his head. Started to remember the moon castle as it once was, but what happened? Why was it in ruins? Sensing his distraught, Yui said, "The kingdom, the Silver Millennium, the castle were attacked by Beryl and the other people back then." Endymion turned around and asked, "But why?" "Metallo's darkness," Yui answered. "The hearts were weak, fell victim to it. Only the two of us were able to withstand it. So, we were able to fend it off ourselves, protecting the Silver Millennium and its princess." "Serenity," Endymion explained. "Where is she? How is she?" "She's doing fine," answered Yui. "Just sad and in pain." "Why?" Endymion asked. "Because she lost you," she said. "But I'm right here," he argued. "Yes," she said. but not as Endymion she fell in love with. Because I'm part of the Dark Kingdom, he said, mostly to himself. Wait a second. If I'm with them, that means I was captured. I would never. He looks up at her and saw her nod. That is why you won't serve me right now, he continued. She saw her nod again. Tch, he scowled. And Beryl ordered me to steal the legendary silver crystal and murder my one and only. Will you be able to carry it out? She asked. Most likely just half of it, he said. I could steal the legendary silver crystal, but now that I know who and what she is, to me, I can't kill Serenity. I love her. But right now, she said, it's pointless to steal the crystal. Why? Because it's incomplete. So it can't release its true power. It's incomplete because a portion of it is inside you. How can that be? When you died protecting Serenity, her wish to retrieve you moved a piece of the crystal into you, hoping it would bring you back to life. But it didn't work. And that's when I was captured. Yes, but the original target was a legendary silver crystal and Serenity. But because Sailor Venus and Sailor Jupiter protecting her, Serenity lost hold of you, and they got you instead. I see. Suddenly a bright light shone. They turned to see that light was a sunrise. Wow, she explained. I didn't realize it was that late. Let's head back. All right, he said. I'm meeting up with Motoki at the cafe anyway. Sure, Serenity will be there since I asked her to come back. He suddenly felt something wrap around his arm. He looked down and saw a ring wrapped around both his wrists. He looked up at her and asked, What's? The restraints, she responded. I've never used them before, but if they work, I should absorb Metallic's darkness. That means it'll slowly free me, he said. Not a bad idea. She smiled and said, Let's go. That afternoon, Usagi walked up to the Crown Cafe and saw Yui waiting. Hi, Yui-san, Usagi said cheerfully. How are you? Hey, Usagi-chan, Yui replied. I'm doing great. Going to see Endo-kun and Matokio-kun. Yeah, said Usagi. Endo-san is great at the Sailor V game. May I join you? Said Yui. Sure. When the two of them got inside, Endo and Motoki were already playing the Sailor V game. Usagi-chan, said Endo. I'm dying to see you again. Come, take my place. Usagi walked over cautiously and sat down as Yui followed behind her. Endo stood behind her and placed his hands on her shoulders. Endo said to Motoki, Since when did you fall in love with a stranger? It's not like you. Maybe not, said Endo, but people can change. They then all heard customers calling out for help. Motoki scowled, but had to leave anyway. When he was distracted with the customers, Endo bent down and wrapped his arms around Usagi and whispered in her ear, Sako, it's me. Usagi stopped playing and froze. It couldn't be. She dare not hope. She started to tremble, and she asked, Mama-chan, is that really you? Momoro tightened his grip and said, Yes, it's me. Oh, Sako, I've missed you so much. Me too, Usagi said as she turned her head. She turned, and Mamoru encased his lips over hers. The kiss deeper as Usagi stood up and loosely wrapped her arms around his shoulders, slid his arms down his waist. The kiss became more passionate when they opened their mouths and allowed tongues to caress each other. Eventually, the broke for air, and Usagi asked, But how? Yui-chan, Mamoru answered. Metallic's darkness controls me, but after you left yesterday, she saw through my disguise and took me to the moon. Where we were there, I brought back some memories. Who and what you are to me. The destruction of the kingdom and our home. She explained to me at what happened. Both Momoro and Usagi looked over at Yui when Usagi asked, "Why?" I will always do everything in my power to ensure happiness to both of you, Yui answered. I hate seeing either of you unhappy. Thank you, Usagi smiled. But I have to go home now. Before you go, Usagi, said Yui, we have to formulate a plan to lure out and defeat Beryl. We know I have to find the control room and steal the legendary silver crystal, said Momoro. It's the only way. After the three came up with a plan, Usagi left the center after giving Momoro a small kiss on the lips. This is a weird placement for a story. Okay. After Usagi left, Makoto confronted Endo and Mikoki about Usagi. Endo didn't answer, but succeeded in putting her under his spell. She took them to the control room and called everyone there. Once the rest arrived, Makoto went off at Usagi about her time with Endo protecting the legendary silver crystal. Everyone, including Luna and Artemis, were all confused. Makoto reached out when Usagi and the legendary silver crystal were within reach, but she was knocked away by Minako, who crashed to the floor and fell unconscious. Usagi just stared at the unconscious body of Motoko, and it dawned on her the plan was in motion. She looked over at Yui, who gave her an affirmative nod, smiling mischievously. Usagi shouted, "Moon, prism, power, makeup." After transforming, she looked around the control room and saw Yui, also transformed. Everyone else started bombarding with questions. "What are you doing?" asked Minako. "Why did you transform?" asked Aunt Amy. "What happened to Moko-chan?" asked Ray. Sailor Moon asked Luna. "What's going on?" "It's just a shush and transform," Sailor Moon said coldly. "That's an order." Sailor Moon turned her head over her shoulder. They saw the icy look in her eyes. Scared, they did as she ordered. After transforming, Sailor Moon said, "Sailor Venus, prepare your love chain." As Venus prepared, Moon resumed, looking around the room and thought, "Momo-chan, where are you?" She then heard the voice in her head say, "I'm right here, my love." Then they heard the voice say, "One step closer," and she would have had it. Humph, unless yet still resourceful. They all turned and now saw Tuxedo Common. Matoki, everyone except for Sailor Moon, screamed Tuxedo Common. They never would have guessed the control room would be directly beneath the Sailor V game, Tuxedo Common continued. The strong shield kept me from sensing it. I lost my place right there. Alright, there it is. Makoto raced towards Sailor Moon and shouted as he reached for her chest, "Hand over the legendary silver crystal." Sailor Moon dodged his assault and said, "Sure, but not to you." "What?" exclaimed Luna and Artemis. "Sailor Moon!" As Sailor Moon leaped over Matoki's head and called to Sailor Venus and said, "Wake him up!" "Venus, lock me chain," shouted Venus. After watching Matoki fall to the floor, Makoto did. She turned towards Sailor Moon and asked, "Where are?" Sailor Moon landed in front of Tuxedo Carmen and kissed him fully on the mouth. He let out a muffled gasp and then returned the kiss with the power of love. As they kissed, Sailor Moon yanked off the legendary silver crystal from around her neck and placed it in Tuxedo Common's hand, wrapped his fingers around it. Then they felt the soft glow coming from between them. They reluctantly broke apart and looked down. The restraints on his wrists were radiating soft white glow and seemed to be absorbing something. Momo-chan, is it absorbing what I think it is? If it is, that means Metallo's darkness is being absorbed. Usako, I'm being freed. I can't believe it. Yui's the best. She always will be. Just then Tuxedo Common remembered Sailor Moon had slipped something into her hand. He opened his hand and saw the legendary silver crystal sitting in his palm. He looked up at Sailor Moon and asked, Usako, why? I thought. She placed a finger on his lips to silence him and said, I don't want to see my friends hurt. Besides, after being apart for so long, losing you that night when they captured you, I desperately wanted to be close to you. He kissed her passionately. When he wrapped his arms around her, everyone was shocked to see the necklace he was holding. Sailor Moon! Shouted Luna. What have you done? Sailor Moon didn't hear Luna, since she and Tuxedo Common were both lost in the world of for two. Seeing this, Luna said, the other guardians, Everyone, we need to get the legendary silver crystal back. Sailor Jupiter, who had awoken and transformed, called, Hey, Tuxedo Common! Finally hearing them, the lovers came up for air and looked over to them. As they did, Jupiter shouted, Give it back, you bastard! No, Sailor Moon shouted. She hugged him and placed her head on his shoulder. No, explained Luna. But he's the enemy now. Yes, said Sailor Moon. But Yui stepped forward, blocking the Sailor Guardians with her staff, and said, It's all going according to plan. Please do not interfere. Sailor Guardians all stared at her. Both Luna and Artemis were just as surprised, but Artemis managed to blurt out, What plan? Yui looked over them and giggled. We'll explain later, although being intimate was not part of it. But who can blame them? They've been apart for too long. Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Common mildly blushed. Suddenly a voice bellowed, Well done, Tuxedo Common. Then a woman appeared behind Tuxedo Common, placed a hand on his free shoulder as she crackled. With the legendary silver crystal in my use, my use for you has come to an end. And to you, Sailor Guardians, this will be your grave. Tuxedo Common swung his arm and yanked himself free from the woman's grip. As he turned to face her, she laughed evilly. Prince, no matter how many times I meet you, you're always a bratty little child. Tuxedo Common became angry, but as he felt Sailor Moon's body tense up, he sensed her fear. He held her tighter and pushed his mind towards hers, whispering the words of comfort. He felt her tense body relax a bit. Do you remember my face? The woman continued. It's true, though I am not like I used to be. Sailor Mars shouted angrily. Who do you think you are, threatening the princess like that? I am Princess Beryl, the woman said. Queen of the Dark Kingdom. Yui burst out laughing and annoyed Beryl. What's so funny? I am a princess, asked Yui. Give me a break. You and I are Tuxedo Common's, Enderman's subordinates. We have only one thing in common. We both fell in love with Enderman. Anyway, says Tuxedo Common. Beryl-chan, take a look at my wrists. See anything familiar? Queen Beryl looks and gasps. Metallo's darkness. What's going on? Being absorbed out of my body, answered Tuxedo Common. These restraints are freeing me from Metallo, and my restored yet clouded memories of our past is slowly coming back. Sailor Moon suddenly sensed a light coming from within Metallo's darkness. She looked down and her eyes went wide. She pushed her mind towards Tuxedo Common again. Her thoughts and looked over at himself. Her eyes went wide as hers. Momo-chan, is that... I don't know. Could be. If it is, then... She looked up at him. And he looked down at her. And he saw the worry, the fear in those beautiful blue eyes. Suddenly the white, bright light blinded all. When it faded, Tuxedo Common fell limp and collapsed to the ground, taking Sailor Moon with him. Seeing her opportunity, Beryl charges towards Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Common as she reached for the legendary silver crystal. Sailor Moon noticed and quickly grabbed the crystal and placed it back around her neck. She then hugged Tuxedo Common, who was unconscious, to protect him as Yui leapt in front of them to block Beryl's assault. Out of my way! Beryl shouted. It's mine! No, responded Yui. It's not yours. It belongs to Sailor Moon. With her staff, Yui knocked Beryl back as Tuxedo Common slowly regained consciousness. Tuxedo Common? Asked Sailor Moon, hopeful. When his eyes were able to focus, he looked up and said, Oh, Sailor Moon, my beloved Serenity. And even my love, said Sailor Moon. Are you okay? Yes, said Tuxedo Common. I feel completely free. That's because you are, said a voice that sounds identical to Sailor Moon's. Everyone turns towards the voice they saw, Princess Serenity. The figure looked at all surprised, confused, and giggled, and then said, I'm not Serenity, nor am I Serenity. I'm a physical image of the objects that sits around the Princess Serenity's neck. With everyone's realization, it said, Yes, I am the legendary silver crystal. This image was created because I wanted to tell Enderman something. Tell me, asked Tuxedo Common. Yes, the crystal said. I wanted to tell you the reason you feel free, because I purged all of Metala's darkness from your body. She can no longer control you, nor can Beryl. Really? He asked in disbelief. Yes, it is said, and you also have some of my power within you. Use it when you don't have enough of your own power when protecting Serenity. Thank you, said Tuxedo Common. He turned to find Sailor Moon's eyes sparkling, as bright as her smile. He leaned over lightly and kissed her on the cheek. Then he stood up, bringing her with him. One more thing, Enderman, the crystal said. Yes, he asked, the image floating over and whispered something in his ear, then turned to Yui and said, Thank you for your completing me. My pleasure, said Yui. Tuxedo Common, son. Sama, shall we? Tuxedo Common nodded and said, Oh, sword, oh, divine sword that protects my princess, come to my hand. With the sword in hand, Tuxedo Mask plunged between Beryl's breasts. The blade pierced into her heart. She let out a silent scream and cry. Why? I love you. And so does Yui-chan, Tuxedo replied. When he pulled out the sword, it disappeared, and Beryl dissolved into nothingness, except her crown. Seeing this, he turned and scooped up Sailor Moon and walked over to the others, with Yui close behind him. And that is the end of this weird, or I'm guessing original character? I don't know of a Yui in the original series. Or at least not this Yui. Plus there is definitely a change in Beryl a little bit, and a little bit in the darkness and all this. Because Beryl very much was in love with Enderman. And that is the reason she twisted sides. She wanted the prince. And that's why she also corrupted him, is she wanted the prince. So this story is a little weird. But I mean, that's what this show is about. That's what we're going through, the weird series out there. What did I close that I didn't close? Okay. This last one is 2 chapters. It says it may be 3 to 4, but I think it actually ends in chapter 2. So this is, so we've done our Magical Girls and Mayhem for the first basically 45 minutes of today. We're gonna end, because last time we started with a Spy X Family story when we did this series like this. We're gonna do another Spy X Family. This one, it's getting to be Father's Day, so we have exactly that. The title is Father's Day Gift, by the Other Realm writer. Anya wants to get Lloyd the perfect Father's Day gift, and it comes up with an idea to get him to meet Donovan Desmond, or at least another Stella Star, by throwing a party at Eden College for the dads of the students. With permission from Henderson and help from Becky, they must throw an elegant party to get a star and possibly Lloyd close to Donovan. So, we're going to continue or do this story here. And it does note, I do not own Spy X Family. Okay, I noticed this is a lot in fanfics fandoms, yet I have to say I've fallen in love with the anime, and with Father's Day coming up this June, I wanted to do something. Okay, so that's what the writer did. So this is literally recently updated. Okay, first chapter. Anya stared at the television, as if her life depended on it. Lloyd was not sure that starring in a spy wars was intently as she would be good for her. But had to concede with Yor. It was something that made her happy, and she did deserve a reward for getting her second Stella Star. It so happens to coincide with Spy Wars Marathon that ended past Anya's bedtime. Well, not such a reward as Bond, the large fluffy dog that Anya was holding on to. It was something that made Anya very happy, and since examinations were still over a month away, it was a suitable reward that Yor had suggested and Lloyd agreed to. Besides, after putting up with Yuri, trying to tutor her before the midterms, it was a disaster. But he said he'd come back closer to exam time. God knows that his presence is tense enough, Lloyd thought as he watched the show with a slight smirk. He knew that this show was nothing like the real thing. I have to step out for a bit. Will you two be fine by yourselves? He asked, looking to Yor and Anya. Yes, of course, Lloyd, Yor said. See you up later, Papa. Anya waved. Be sure to wash your hands. I'll be sure to. Lloyd blushed, thinking that Anya was meaning he needed to use the restroom. However, due to the staffing issues at Wise, there was a need for him to be run quick back to the mission that he fretted he would get his hands dirty on. With this, she turned back and stared at the television, just paying less attention with the commercials on. Her disinterest was disapparent when a new commercial came on. Don't forget your dad this Father's Day. Bring him a blatant billion beef for the best steaks a dad could ever want. Best in Estonia. Don't forget the date. Bring dad and show him how much he's loved. And to shop for gifts, come over to Berlin Galleria. We have everything Dad could want at low prices. Act now, Dad loves dependence. Love depends on it. Don't forget him. Mama? Anya jumped up. We need to do something for Father's Day. She yelled and pointed at the TV as the show came back on, distracting Anya for the latest escapades of Bondmen. Well, We should do something for your father, Yor said, as she noticed Anya staring at the TV. As Anya watched Bondman pull out a silenced pistol, she reached over for the bag of peanuts and ate them excitingly. This was the season finale, after all. Everything had been building up to the last moments. Would Bondman save the princess and defeat the terrorists? Anya stared intently as the show progressed through them. Anya could hardly blink till the show was over, when Bondman had saved the princess, and she gave him a grateful kiss on the cheek. And with this, Yor smiled and turned off the television. Mama, Anya moaned. It's time for bed, dearie. Yor smiled. Your treat was to stay up late and watch the season finale that was on tonight. I'm her mother, after all. I have to be firm. But, Mama! I'll read you a story if you get ready, Yor said. One of my spy-word books? Anya asked. Of course, Yor smiled. Now get ready for bed. Okay. Anya sighed as she got up from the floor and headed to the bathroom to brush her teeth and put on her pajamas. Once finished, she took Chimera and curled up under the blanket. That one, Mama, she pointed at the spy words book she had laid on top of her desk. Yor began to read the thrilling, exaggerating various accents and parts that take action scenes and explosions, much for Anya's entertainment. At the end, she kissed Anya on the forehead and went to turn off the light. Papa's not home yet? She asked. I'm afraid not, Yor sighed. However, you have school tomorrow. You stayed up late enough. What would Papa want? Anya asked. Huh? Yor paused, surprised by the question. For Father's Day, Anya said. I saw the commercial on the TV and I wanted to get him something. Yor began. Well, a family outing would look good and make us seem like a normal family so my co-workers and neighbors can stop gossiping. It's getting old fast, and with Yuri acting like he is, it would ease Lloyd's mind. But she looked over at the clock and sighed. It was getting late, much too late for a young girl to be awake. I'm not certain, but I will ask him when he gets home. There's one thing I know that your papa wants for you, and that is to get enough sleep so you can get good grades and maybe even a stellar star at school. With this, she kisses Anya's forehead again. Now sleep tight, little one, she added, and she turned off the light and shut the door behind her. Once she was assured that Yor had headed away from the bedroom, Anya sat up and looked at Chimera. This would be easier with Bond, but Papa doesn't want him in the bedroom with me. He says he's too big. Anyway, Papa wants me to get close to Damien and meet him as Papa. It's for the mission, she said. She knew that Lloyd's mission and that he wanted her to get close to him, but all her attempts lately have come to naught. I apologized and he still won't talk to me. He always turns red and runs away. He makes fun of me, too, and I try to be his friend, she sighed. However, she knew that Lloyd wanted to be an Imperial scholar, and that required 8 stellar stars. She had 2 already, both notable contributions to the community. She wasn't dumb. She wasn't as smart as Damien was. Then it hit her. A way to get Lloyd closer to his target, and one that might even get her their next stellar star. But she had to tell her master, Mr. Henderson. He was obsessed with elegance, as she had heard him use the word so much, but it had to be done, and he might, if she was lucky, issue a star for that. Knowing she had to summon all her courage for the next day, she went to sleep remembering that Yor had told her about being tired, about being bad for your looks and your brains. Next morning, Anya woke and got ready for school, with a determined look on her face. Hopefully, Professor Henderson approves of this. she thought. She took a big bite of the cereal that Yor had poured out for her. Are you okay, Anya? Are you okay, Anya? Lloyd asked, noticing Anya already in her school uniform, when normally she ate breakfast before she got dressed. Yes, I have to talk to Professor Henderson, Anya said firmly. She noticed that Lloyd was worried about his thoughts and seemed to confirm this to her. Nothing bad, Papa. But I have an idea for a school project that might get me another star. Oh, Lloyd asked. Can you tell me what it is? It's a surprise, Papa, Anya said. Did you tell Mama about it? Lloyd prodded. Not yet, and when I do tell her, she can't tell you, Anya said firmly, as Yor smiled. It would spoil the surprise. Well, we have to get you ready to catch the bus. Yor, Anya, he said as they both nodded and got up. Heading to the bus, Anya rode. Her mind focused on one thing and the idea of her party. It was to be for Father's Day, and all the fathers of Eden Academy would come. Even Damien's father, the one that Lloyd was so desperate to get close to. It was for world peace after all. She was determined to help her Papa do his job, and to do it well. Knowing how much her role made him worry, the bus pulling up to school, and Anya got off, quickly running into the halls, not even noticing Becky as she got out of her car. Anya, wait! Becky said as she ran up, panting, catch her breath. What's going on? I have to talk to Professor Henderson, Anya said. What about? Becky asked. If you're gonna tell Damien about for acting like he did, it's not gonna stop him. I know that, Anya said. I have an idea for a special project to earn another Stella star. Becky asked. Can I join you? My dad's starting to complain about me not getting anything myself. Anya looked at her friend's face. She was one of the few people who had befriended her and thought of her nicely. Why she shouldn't keep Becky from becoming an Imperial Scholar as well. If she said, or she had befriended Damien, it'd be nice if Becky was there too, with her after all. She knew she couldn't tell Becky of the mission, but if she just let her know about wanting to get the stars, it would be something that would motivate her as well. Okay, but you can't tell anyone besides Professor Henderson. What are friends for? Becky smiled. Let's go, Anya said as she and Becky headed up to the door of Professor Henderson's office and knocked. Here goes nothing, Anya said, closing her eyes and knocking. Come in, Professor Henderson said. And with Anya opening the door, the heart racing, trying to keep a brave face while Becky was behind her looking curious. How may I help you, two young elegant ladies? He asked with a smile and principle between his voice and his long mustache. It reminds me of some of the kung fu movies like my grandmaster who teaches, Becky thought, as she started to stare at his mustache and nudged Anya. Tell him, Anya, she whispered. Tell me what? Professor Henderson asked. I want to earn a star for me and Becky, said Anya. Well, that's elegantly admirable. You know what to do. You know what to do, you two, Professor Henderson asked. But Anya had an interesting idea, Becky said. Tell him. I'm here for you. Okay, Anya said as she grabbed her fists and summoned her courage. This is for Papa's mission. The perfect Father's Day gift. For world peace. So he can get on his mission. He wants me to be friends with Damien for it. But Damien's a butt. So maybe with this, we get him to meet Damien's dad. Becky and I want to throw a party here at Eden Academy for all the dads and papas on Father's Day.
Professor Henderson said. And you think you can do this and be worthy of a stellar star?
Yes, Becky added. We think that this is the greatest way for Eton students to have a nice day with their dads in a fine, elegant establishment. She knew it was just work with Professor Henderson and stellar stars for contributions to society as well as grades.
This is true, Mrs. Blackbell, Professor Henderson said. I approve of this idea. You two must plan this, to do most of the work yourselves. However, if you need help decorating due to things like heights, our staff here is to help you. But you must do most of the work for both to get that star. Am I clear? Do we understand?
Yes, sir. Crystal clear.
Good, Professor Henderson said. I hope this elegant party, goodness knows how hard the students' fathers work to provide top-notch education. You are now dismissed. I wish you a productive, elegant day,
he said as the girls walked to the door, realizing they had done and signed up for. So yeah, this was, okay, give him an idea for other parts. There's the next part. So we're going to go to the next part. So we're waiting for it to load. And we are on the final part here. I'm going to try and do this a little bit better here for the group. Alright. So we're continuing from the next part. Lloyd looked over the two young girls headed to Professor Henderson's office to their homeroom for the day, disguised as a janitor. He wanted to make sure that Anya was not in trouble or up to no good. She had 2 turret bolts, which made him more nervous than what they had in mind. 8 of them led to expulsion. He couldn't honestly fault her for the why she ended up in the position she did. She didn't like that she punched Damien, but Yor convinced him it was for the protection of her friend, and deeply sorry for teaching her. The second one was for not having her handkerchief, which was only because she gave hers to Damien so he himself wouldn't get a bolt. It was to help his mission. I doubt Donovan Desmond would actually show up for something like a school party for Father's Day, Lloyd thought, knowing that man didn't show up for opening ceremonies. But if it goes well, then she will get another star, so will Becky. I don't know what concerns me, but it does, he thought, as he picked up the bucket and headed to the maintenance closet. Placing the janitorial equipment down, he paused and smiled. Anya is doing this for me, to get the stars she needs, but also for Father's Day. Never thought I would think so much of me, that she would do. Lloyd paused. Anya was doing this all for him, and the mission. However I act, like I never had heard this. She wants it to be a surprise, after all. Meanwhile, Anya and Becky were sitting in their first class of the day, math. Ever since her breakthrough watching Spy Wars and Yui's tutelage, she's gotten much better than when she started the school year. Horrible grades were not going to earn Anya turret bolts, but Lloyd still worried about her, as she still was not such a scholar, and she would get stars from the grades alone. He knew she was trying. He couldn't fault her for that. However, it was harder for Anya to concentrate when she knew that the party that she and Becky were planning would either get Lloyd close to Donovan or at least get her another star. And even if all that was done, she got a star, Becky would get one too. And what would we divide 9/12 to be reduced to reduce this fraction, Anya? Anya panicked. She didn't want the teacher to catch her not paying attention. She quickly looked back at Damien, read his mind. It's 3. Why doesn't the teacher ever pick me? I'm the best here. 3, Anya said quickly.
Correct,
The teacher said, turning back to the lesson. Phew, Anya sighed, staring now back at the teacher, wanting to pay attention. As the day wore on, both Becky and Anya had written down ideas and agreed to talk about in the cafeteria. The last thing either of them had wanted was to get in trouble for not paying attention. Once they had ordered, Becky sat across from Anya, placing her tray down. She looked over at Anya. Got the omelet again? She asked as she took her spoonful of her mushroom risotto. This one's my favorites. Well, we need to talk about the party we're planning. I want to get one of those stars so bad. All the help we're getting here is to hang up stuff. However, it's not a party without food and drinks. Just like my dad says, he always has a cook prepare hors d'oeuvres and a charcuterie plates for our guests and champagne for the finest regions of the world, Becky said. We should do that. I don't think we're allowed champagne, Anya pointed out. Yeah, Becky admitted, knowing that if they had brought that, it might be not looked on well. But we can't get sparkling juice. It tastes a lot like it. Bubbles like it, even everyone can have it. Both kids and dads. My mama can't drink. She gets crazy when she does, Anya added. See, more reasoning for sparkling juice, Becky said as she wrote down on a note she had pulled out. What's a charcuterie? Asked Anya, mispronouncing charcuterie. Ah, I don't think your dad took you to very many fancy parties. He seems like a very protective type. My dad lets me have a little of the food and the non-alcoholic drink if I do good in school for some of his, Becky said as Anya looked sad. It's no big deal. I'm not a jerk like Damien would be on that. Charcuterie is it's a culinary art for preparing meat products such as bacon, salami, ham, sausages, terrines, gelatines, ballotines, pâtés, and confit. All sorts of fancy foods, she added as Anya looked confused in some words. It's pretty good. And I know my dad loves them. He has that along with caviar and tons of other foods that snobs like. Like Damien? Well, they say like father, like son, so yeah, Damien's kind of a snob, so I imagine his dad would be the same. Becky shrugged. Anya looked around the hall and imagining what she could do. Balloons on the table, a large banner that said Happy Father's Day, all hand-painted with elegant way that would impress Professor Henderson. After all, she won first place in her art project, even if Damien had to be paired with her. Tablecloths and just everything would make this elegant. And get her a star, we need a big banner. Over the stairs, there, she pointed. Cool, Becky noted. Look, we're running out of lunchtime, she said, noticing the time on her watch. How about tomorrow, after school, you come to my place and we work on this? I would have to ask Mama and Papa, Anya said. I don't want to spoil the surprise. Well, say you have a school project with me, Becky smiled. It won't be lying. No, it wouldn't, Anya said, straightening her resolve. And since the weekend is starting, we could even have a sleepover, Becky smiled. I always wanted to have a friend that could do that with. That would be so much fun, Anya smiled. That evening, Lloyd had prepared dinner, knowing what happened that day at the school. Anya had taken Yor into the other room so that Lloyd wouldn't hear her. Anya trusted Yor, wouldn't tell Lloyd. Mama, I need to go to Becky's tomorrow for a sleepover. Oh, now why is that? Yor asked. Anya mentioned for Yor to come closer and whisper in ear. Because we're planning Father's Day party at school, and if Professor Henderson likes it, we both get a stellar star. Well now, that's a wonderful idea, Yui said. I don't see any reason why you cannot, Becky said as she would give a ride after school tomorrow. Becky said she'd give me a ride after school tomorrow, Anya said. Well then, looks like I will wait for you there and meet with her parents, Yor smiled. More like her driver, Anya said. Her parents don't drop her off at school. Well, I'm sure he's respectable either way. She smiled as Lloyd called for dinner. Yor and Anya sat down and looked at the plates in front of them with joy. Lloyd was skilled at cooking, and today he had made a dish of spaghetti with homemade marinara, a basket of garlic knots for them to eat with it. Anya looked at the dish greedily and she took a big bite and smiled up at Lloyd. So, what was it you two were talking about? Lloyd asked, looking at some of the plans she had concocted with Becky. I need to stay over at Becky's this weekend, Anya said. Mama said it was okay. Yor? Lloyd asked. Yes, it's for a school project. I think it would do Anya some good to spend some time with friends. Yor nodded with a wink to Anya, who stuck up her thumb. Lloyd smiled. Well now, this will certainly show Professor Henderson they are outstanding scholars, and it would do good to start working my way into other possible targets later on, like Becky's father. And at this, Anya jumped up, thinking that it meant that Becky's father was the target like Damien's was. But as much as I hate for Anya to go away, it would do her good to spend some time with some friends. See no harm in this, Lloyd said. Be sure to give Becky's parents our phone number in case something happens. I want you two to do your best with whatever it is you have to do. Thank you, Papa, Anya said. However, you must help with the dishes tonight, Lloyd said. Be a big girl and you can earn your overnight stays with friends. But it's for school, Anya pleaded. Still, if it was just for school, I would have them bring you back before bedtime. Understood? Lloyd asked. Understood. Anya saluted the dinner and finished, and Yor took her and Lloyd's plates. I'll do the dishes tonight, Lloyd, if you don't mind, Yor said. I would like to have some time with Anya before she goes away. Mind you, however, this would give me a chance to catch up on my lists. There are a few assassinations I need to do. There's some just a poisoning, and others are more hands-on, she thought with a smile. Mama's going to be an assassin while I'm at Becky's house. And Papa thinks Becky's dad is up to something, Anya thought with glee, as she headed over to the kitchen sink and pulled out a stool to reach the faucet and rinse the dishes as Yor washed them and placed them on the drying rack beside her. Becky's dad can come to the party too, so Papa can meet him there and find out his secrets. She smiled as she helped Yor finish the dishes. With a sigh, Yor turned off the faucet and dried her hands and gave Anya the towel to place on the floor off of her stool. Lloyd looked up from the newspaper and smiled over at Yor and Anya. So dishes are done, he asked. Yes, Yor smiled. And Anya was a perfect helper, weren't you? Of course, Papa, Anya saluted. Now I need to pack for the sleepover. I'll help you. You will want to look your best to impress Becky and her family, Yor smiled. Like a real mother and daughter, Lloyd thought, with a smile as he turned the page of the paper Frankie had given him. And perfect timing, too. A story about an overweight nightingale, nurse shark at the aquarium, was a cipher that means, this will be a long mission. Anya jumped at this. Everything okay? Lloyd asked as he heard Anya's explanation. Everything's fine. Everything fine, Papa? Anya covered up with this, and Yor looked through the wardrobe, find a formal but relaxed dress, something the two girls could play with in, but still was respectable of Becky's class and society. How about this one? For when you get off of school tomorrow, Yor said, holding up a paisley print dress with white trim and a matching white vest. And this one for when you're there Saturday, she said. She held out a black button-up shirt with a white collar and a long plaid skirt. Those are cool, Anya said. Okay, said Yor as she pulled out the brown leather suitcase with wheels. We'll put them in here. You want to make a good impression on Becky's family. Yes, Anya said. Oh, and your papa's really likes sweet cakes. Yor winkled. I have seen him eat so many at fancy parties. I have been with him. Okay, Anya saluted. Becky has a charcuterie tree in mind, so it's snack foods at fancy parties. Since you're trying to win the elegant Professor Henderson, tell Becky you will need caviar and toast points too, Yori added. She may have been an assassin, but she had known a few things about fancy, elegant parties, as she had many missions unfurled at them. What's caviar? Anya asked as she crawled into the bed with Chimera under her arm. Salty eggs from a sturgeon, Yor said. Anya looked clueless. It's a fish. Ew, Anya said. Maybe, but that's what people like Becky's dad and Professor Henderson have at parties, like you are planning, along with sweets and desserts, too. I want you to do well, and if you need any help, feel free to ask me, okay? We can only get help with the hanging decorations, Anya sighed. Oh, dear, Yor sighed. But I'm sure Becky's seen her fair share of parties, so is a great assistant. Do well. I want to see your papa's face when he attends the party and when you get to your next star, she added with a kiss and tucked Anya in. Sleep tight. You too, Mama. Anya yawned and Yor turned off the light and shut the door. So, Lloyd asked, causing Yor to jump in surprise. What is that about Anya and Becky are planning to do? What to do? What do I have to do with it? All you have to do is show up when they're done, Yor said. I'm sure you will be given an invitation. Anya asked me not to tell anyone. You more as she wants to surprise you for Father's Day, as Yor covered her mouth. So, I'm assuming she and Becky are planning a party on Father's Day for all the dads at Eden Academy, Lloyd asked. All as Yor did touch her nose and say, I guess, on the nose. I won't tell Anya I will act the surprise for her. I won't tell Anya, and I'll act surprised for her. You didn't tell me. I just, guessed, Lloyd said. So you don't have any broken your promise to your daughter. Great, Yor smiled. Well, I have a long day ahead of me tomorrow. And luckily, Anya's sleeping over with a friend as well. Overnight duty at the psychiatric hospital, so it won't be here, Lloyd said. Sorry if you'll be alone. Oh, no, Yor said. A friend invited me to a girls' night the other day and said I would think about going, but Anya's gone and you have work overnight, so I guess I have no choice. Good thing that Lloyd doesn't know this is a complete lie. Good thing Yor doesn't suspect this thing beyond the psychiatrist's fronts, Lloyd thought as they both headed to their bedrooms. Mama and Papa are lying again, Chimera. But at least they won't be worrying about me while they do their spy and assassination work, Anya whispered to her stuffed animal as she closed her eyes and went to sleep, eagerly awaiting the fun you would have at Becky's house. So, I have to say, that is all that's out of this. We're going to be concluding here. Definitely thank Other Realm writer here for this. I do feel like this is a good story. Out of the 3 stories we did tonight, the Sailor Moon one was weird. The Puni Puni Magica Madoka was hilarious. I'll be ironic that it was an old, what if older women were the magical girls? Hey, interesting. But yeah, no, overall, decent stories in my opinion. Next week we will be doing a submitted story. So we'll be reading from a fan submitted story next week, and then in 2 weeks we're going to do something else. We might do more 11 Kingdoms. I don't know what yet, but we will be back again tomorrow to continue our Persona 5 Royale playthrough. We will be sort of in between story arcs, or in between palaces this next stream, trying to finish up as many confidants as we can. So we'll be back with that tomorrow. And of course, we've got our art stream on Saturday. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. And until then, always, I hope you have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week, and a